Can you make Get Out on an indie level budget? Well, Get Out was made for $4.5 million, and I, as a indie level producer, am going to explain to you how you can make a movie like Get Out for $500,000. Yes, folks, that's $500,000. Quick pause. If you guys want to have any context, you can watch part 1 where I analyze Jordan Peele's Get Out script, or you can read it linked down below. You don't need to know getting into this, but just as a forewarning. So let's get into it. Based on the script, it's not a lot of characters for the most part. The auction day party will at most take 2 days of 12 to 16 extras. The police department, you got those 3 officers, which the 2 can act as background for the first part of the conversation. And then it'll take a day of extras to shoot all of the TSA scenes. So you have Chris, the Armitages and Help, and Rod. Speaking of the TSA, the locations, again, easy stuff. An apartment, the street below it, a deserted road. It's super simple to close one. You got the Armitage's estate where 80% of the movie is shot. You can create Chris's flashbacks in the basement or an extra room, as well as that whole Walter Jeremy car crash moment, which I'd assume is just like a private stretch on the property. You can also black out the walls in the basement to shoot the sunken room. But there's, black box studios available for you to film at. There's the exterior of an airport, a police officer's office, which I've seen created in a dance studio, and the visiting center of a prison. Now, let me tell you what the most expensive part of this will be. Well, first, as always, it's the cast and crew wages, SAG fringes if you're casting SAG actors, and also if you're going to be a union crewed set. Below that, if you don't have annual insurance or working with a production company that has annual insurance, short-term insurance and legal fees for deal memos and contracts will be sort of next, along with food. Please feed your cast and crew good, yummy meals and snacks. We'll go over all the rest of the lines, but those are just like the quickest evaluations. So let's just take it from my perspective. If a fellow NYU alumni is like, here, Alexa, I want to make my film Get Out shot in New York and the Armitage's location upstate, I'm like, bet. I read your script. And these are my critical notes. My critical notes are things that'll either add a lot of additional money to your production and or alter your schedule. Page 1, we've already got 2 kids. Working a SAG set, now I'll need a studio teacher. And also because it's shot at night, that's something we might have to cheat just because of the restrictions children have when working certain hours. And ages can change, but Jordan says Joshua 6 and May 4. Page 2, it's not that bad, but the vintage cream colored Porsche, because it's such a nice car, is probably going to cost a bit versus like a random Toyota that I can borrow from my friend. But I understand the picture that he's trying to paint. Because in this scene we're also filming on the street, that could mean a street closure, definitely a permit. And on page 4 we've got a weapon, which sometimes could require an armorer. This whole sequence could also maybe use a stunt coordinator just to advise for Andre's character how to fall when they're shot. For the cars, same on page 9, a shiny white BMW X5. And also at the bottom of page 9 in the slug line, it says bird's eye view, meaning we'll have to get a drone. And if you're shooting in New York, you need a permit to do that. That slug is also the start of a pretty lengthy conversation in a moving car, which means we'll need a road closure, a permit for the road closure, police officers or flaggers or signage at least, just depending on, what the permit office says, and depending on your level of production, a process trailer, which puts the picture car on a trailer and is driven by a crew member so that your actor is like appears to be driving but isn't actually really driving, so the safety of those 2 people in the car isn't in the actor's hands when they already have to deliver dialogue, and all of that costs a lot. But also later in the scene you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone if you have to hire police officers to close down the road, because they get pulled over by cops in a cop car. You could maybe ask to borrow their cop car, but also it's not very expensive to rent a prop vehicle, and if someone is impersonating or acting as a police officer in public, costs can be associated with that to not make the general public think that that's real. Another critical slug location, the exterior of LaGuardia Airport. An airport is really active, but most definitely all of the ones in New York. We've got page 13, the hind legs of a deer smacking the hood. That can be expensive depending on how the director wants to shoot it. Another big location, the Armitage Estate, Jordan Wright's mansion. Forest Lake. We also know it needs to be able to hold a few cars since, everybody pulls up in their little driveway for the auction. Then there's inside the house, all of the taxidermy. That can get expensive, as well as all of the artwork, all of which you have to get cleared pre-filming. You cannot just use artwork for free. If you shoot artwork and then don't get it cleared, then you're going to have to spend money in VFX, sort of replacing it for a different piece of artwork. But this ultimately depends on your distribution goal. If you want it like out in theaters, if you want it beyond festivals, honestly, even in festivals, you should have clearances, but just get your artwork cleared. This was on page 6 as well as 23. We have pets. We have a black dog and a white cat. That needs an animal wrangler, which are additional day rates. I think the sunken place, the way that he describes it, can be pretty inexpensive. As I mentioned, you can just shoot it in a black box. But what's expensive is page 43. The deer with its flesh stripped off and mostly its skull exposed, which charges and impales Chris. VFX, or CGI, but money, post-production costs. We've got another dog on page 46, and then 12 expensive cars. Luckily, he doesn't describe what they are, but they gotta look expensive. Next big note is that the auction party is from pages 49 to 70. That's 20 pages. I think it could ambitiously be shot in 3 days, but the critical note here is that it's a really, really long day. It's only until page 69 that it's finally dusk. So immediately, I would think that we need to shoot this sometime in late spring or summer so that we can shoot on the days that have the maximum amount of sun. Also in the middle of that, there are sparklers on page 65, which, raise a little fire safety concern. Page 77, not only are we at LaGuardia, we are inside at the TSA security check. It's possible, but it's also a big flag. 79, there's a mention of a song, You've Got a Friend by James Taylor. And even though it's the karaoke version, you still have to pay for the rights to use that. And it could be expensive. And then we have the entire escaping sequence at the end. Immediately, stunt coordinator. Practice safe strangling, safe tackling, safe smashing of teacups on heads and bulging out eyes. There's also a fire. Again, VFX, CGI post-production costs. We're going to need a makeup artist who specializes in SFX makeup for all the blood. We have the entire deer antler stabbing deer sequence. Money. We've got a car crash. We definitely need a stunt woman to get hit with the car. We've got a real gun, not just a stun gun from before, and it's also going off multiple times. You definitely are going to need an armorer then. And then lastly, we've got a maximum security prison slug line, which can or cannot be expensive. First off, let me just say, don't write with critical notes in mind. Write the script you want. I love what Jordan wrote. I love all of it. It's usually the producer's job to suggest alternatives which will help cut expenses if need be, while still getting your scene's point across. I will just say though, after watching the actual movie, a lot of these things were cut. The Shaw family doesn't exist. All the cars changed. The Armitage's estate was less like one percenter and more like upper class family house. Not that much art. There wasn't a cat there. These are all things that I talk about and show in script versus scene. So, again, make sure to support me on Patreon if you want, but let's actually get into the money. So how would I make this? Immediately, let's get cast and crew out of the way. I would recommend a SAG set, non-union crew set, because it's just a bunch of NYU alumni, and I would set it as an ultra low budget project agreement, which means it's minimum $241 right now to pay an actor for 8 hours a day. It's slightly optional to pay background, it just depends, and it's about $1,200 a day or $4,500 for a stunt coordinator for the week, take the week, and then it's 21% P&H contribution rates, fringes, etc. I would also crew the minimum amount of crew you may need. I've done this in the past, working with a crew of 18 people. Let's just say for an average of $600 a day. Please don't crucify me for that number. And that's for 12 hours a day. And let's just say a $2K flat for department heads that they get during pre-pro. You know, production designer, the gaffer, the DP, the first AD, etc. This is going to be incredibly rough, but I'm going to give us 17 days of production. That's 5 days shooting, 1 day rest, 5 days shooting, 2 days rest, and 3 days shooting to either do like the sunken room, Chris's younger self flashback. You could also shoot things in the city, like the police department scene, the cold open in the suburban areas. Personally, this is just something I randomly thought of, I would have a second unit shoot all of Rod's scenes. I think you start the shoot in New York. You could probably knock out that whole Chris and Rose Brooklyn apartment scene in 1 day, shoot the street half day the next day, and spend the rest of the day traveling and moving upstate. While in pre-pro, the art team has already set dressed the apartment, so that way while we're shooting there the next day or whenever is day one, they're already upstate set dressing the estate. While the crew moves to the estate on the second day, you can still have the apartment rented for the next 2 days, and between that time shoot Rod's scenes there and then go shoot the exterior at TSA. Not counting it since the actual movie Get Out did get rid of the maximum security prison scene, but I might start the shoot day one with that scene, then move to Chris's apartment. And I only say that just so Chris doesn't need to come back to the city to shoot anything else if you're going to be shooting the sunken room in the estate. Anyway, look, I'm not a first AD. That was just a thought I had that I wanted to share. And what we're after here is that we're estimating 13 days of shoot dates for the crew, 17 days for the actors because you pay them even for those intervening days. So we're looking at a rough estimate for crew at $140,000. And for your cast, which if I casted all budding actors who are a part of the union and okay with the minimum rate, I'd say about $47,000, which includes the stunt coordinator, a studio teacher, animal wranglers, armorer, and fringes. I'd also have 7.5K set aside for rehearsals. That would just, be like a week of rehearsals with some of your actors, since you have to pay a full day rate for rehearsals. Later on, I'll talk about little ways you can slash those numbers at the end. I know it's like a big scary number to hear. $140,000 just for crew. That's just labor costs, guys. It's the facts. Carrying on the locations. That's the great part about shooting in New York. That's why I would be excited that this alumni was like, let's shoot it here. Because if I'm not going to ask to use my friend's apartment for free, there are resources like Peerspace where you can pay for locations hourly, but because people who live in New Jersey, New York, and even upstate, they know that productions and film sets are always happening in New York. If you find a house you like on Airbnb, you can explain your project to the host, get their permission. Sometimes they say no, sometimes they say yes. They might charge you a little bit more, for cleaning fees and stuff, but it can end up a lot cheaper to pay day rates on Airbnb or discounted weekly rates you can get on Airbnb, obviously other than something hourly. So if Airbnb worked in our favor, I would probably say about $15K for locations. And if you truly do get an estate, because we don't see any other upstairs rooms other than Rose's and a glimpse of Jeremy's, you can house all of your actors in that house. Or your crew in there, because I'll crush on the couch. I don't care. The $15K also includes a day at a black box, exterior of an airport, to which, because airports are always doing construction, if you find the right person to talk to, you can see if you can film in maybe a terminal that's under construction. If like the construction they're doing doesn't impact the outside of it, that might affect your sound quality. But, if you really need an airport, there are ways to get there. I would also add 4 to 5K for housing your crew upstate, whether your crew or your cast, whoever's going to live at the estate. If you want to, you're also going to need to house everybody else. So I'd say that amount. And then probably another 2 to 2.5K for 1 or 2 pass vans for the week and a half. A, to bring everybody upstate, bring everybody back, and then, also to go from whichever housing to set. We also now know that production is 17 days, and you have to feed everyone, even in the off days. I know, guys, so annoying. They don't need to be like set meals. You can also offer per diems, like for groceries, but let's just say they were set meals. I estimate $12 for breakfast, $18 for lunch, and $25 for dinner. This is based on catering, not individual meals, which is about $55 per person per day with 18 crew members, and let's just say an average of 9 cast members, fluctuating on days you have extras, or you're just shooting with Chris. That'd be $25,000 for food. And another 4 to 5K for crafty. There's so many ways to get this down though. You can do a lot of like, yo, I'm gonna order from you for 5 days in a row. Can you give me a good 25% discount? You could, be fiscally sponsored. There's so many things that you could do to lower your food costs. Probably one of the line items that you could honestly get down pretty darn good if you have somebody, if like you can offer a small business, something worth it for them to either donate a meal to your set or give you a nice discount. But as it is, it's 25K. And again, that's a rough number. Things can fluctuate if you want a chef for the actor's house or if you want to cater every meal. There's so many different options. For art department, you've got props, production design, and costumes. I'd say anywhere between 7 to 10K depending on what the Armitage estate already has. And the artwork you might have to replace if you don't get clearance, if they have any sculptures or anything like that. This number just depends on the relationship your art team has with prop houses and also how far your director wants to go. Like, if they just want to shoot in the house as is with maybe some personal trinkets, then you're not really spending that much. But if the director sort of gives them free clearance to sort of do whatever they want, then you could spend upwards of that number pretty easily. Wardrobe might also thrift for costumes or use just what the actors and especially background might already have. The most expensive scene to set dress will probably be the operation room. Also a part of the art department, but not really, is SFX makeup. You're already paying the makeup artist a day rate, and then you want to pay their kit fee. Then they'll probably need another kit fee for like more blood and all of this stuff, so that's all included in all of that. Cross trailer for the day could cost as much as 4K for delivery, use, and return. But I've inquired about this before, and I've seen it be like 2K. It just depends how far upstate you're shooting and how far they have to deliver it. There's equipment, probably some sort of 3-ton or 5-ton package. This is extremely it varies incredibly. You could be working with a G&E team of 5. I've worked with a G&E team of 2 in a 3-ton package with, a lot of add-ons. If I was working with the crew that I have access to, a lot of those guys have their own G&E camera sound equipment. So for me, I would probably estimate 12 to 14K, and that would include an equipment truck, probably the truck that we get from one of the G&E packages. I would also say another 2 to 3K for cargo van for art, maybe a cargo van for camera, but so far I've been able to convince G&E and camera to share. And then I'd have like a prod car or a prod van for all of my production supplies, which would be about 3 to 4.5K to rent tables, chairs. If we're filming closer to summer now, it's hot, so I need pop-ups, fans. This also includes clothing racks, steamers, the director's chair, outlets, vanity mirrors, trash bins, storage bins, coolers, etc., all the things your production needs to keep everyone comfortable behind the scenes. Don't skimp on this, please. I'd then say about 10 to 12K for legal permits and insurance. This would include road closures, police officer rates, and they always come in a pair of 2. Onboarding contracts made by a lawyer, any points amendments you may need to make to a contract, short-term insurance, payroll, workers' comp, again, etc. So right now, that is $295,000, not including contingency. Now, if it was me, I would do everything in my power to get that number down to 210K and then add 20K for contingency, which I know sounds absolutely crazy, but it's because we're not done yet. We still have post-production to do, and we're already at the SAG ultra low budget agreement maximum, which is for $300,000. If we're going to go over that, we have to bump it up to a moderate low budget project agreement, which then has a cap of $700K. But when you do that, you also need to double the day performers rates from $241 to $421. And we are now required to pay background, which I know we always should, guys. I'm really trying. Now, let's say we've got an average of 10 background for those 3 days. That's an additional $6,800 plus doubling the performance rate, which is then also doubling the fringes. We're now looking at something closer to $95K for actors, background, and the other coordinators. Then again, you would double the rate for that week of rehearsals, and that makes it about $15K. So if we take the $295K pre and production budget, add $25K for contingency, then the additional $69,000 for being a moderate low budget agreement now, we're currently at $389,000. But wait, then comes post-production. You've got the edit, the sound design, the color, the score, the VFX, CGI, the music licensing, the credits, and the titles. Wow. Post-production costs can vary very vastly between using a friend who colors for freelance, or you can pay a larger amount to go to an actual sound house for audio engineering ADR, Foley, sound mixing. Re-ADR, you also have to pay the same rate, $421 for the actor to come in and re-record lines. So you're going to need to pay $421 for Rod, who may be shooting the exterior of a under construction terminal, needs to come back in for a day and re-record, redub those lines. Me personally, I would say a risky $70K for post-production. Now look, I've seen it as low as $35K, but I am scared somebody will crucify me for saying that. So I'm going to say $70K for safety. Realistically, it's probably like nearing $100K, but I'm going to stick with 70. And now we're looking at $459,000. And because this is just a rough estimate, it could be more shooting days, it could be less. I could also be vastly underestimating a line, maybe the locations. I'll say in total, a safe $500,000 is what you need. A big ol' $500,000 to make a movie like Get Out. Now look, this number can easily dwindle down. I won't get into the nuances of it all, but if you're really running and gunning, you could make something like Get Out for maybe $100,000, $120,000, including post-production. But then that would separate you and I, because I'm operating at like a semi-indie level, but with a non-union crew set and SAG actors, and doing something like this, which is a very mid-production value, like it's not just like a house for most of it. There's a lot going on. Being able to do it for like 100K or less, it's possible, but you're now doing it guerrilla style. You probably got your friends on board, you're paying them in love, you have free locations. This movie, by the way, can be set anywhere. It doesn't need to be in New York at all. Maybe you have a rich uncle who has a vacation home in South Carolina you can use as the Armitage's estate. If you shoot this in your hometown, you have your parents, your producers, your neighbors to volunteer cooking a meal for your cast and crew. You have access to cars. And if your crew members are just your friends, you have a lot of flexibility with how you want to pay them. A flat, a smaller day rate, whatever feels respectful between the both of you. And then it doesn't matter what level you're operating on, studio level, indie level, guerrilla level, student filmmaking level. There's a lot of free or in-kindly donated resources to anyone, for anyone to find to cut on production costs. Another thing you might want to consider is making any script changes. I would probably change Rod's occupation just because an airport sounds tricky. I think because he's such a conspiracist, I think that he just got fired because of his geriatric comment, and then boom, he just needs to be in Chris's house or at a bus stop or something, and you still get your point across. I would use whatever cars you have accessible. I would hide a lot of the action, VFX, SFX makeup shots, maybe have the car run out of gas instead of having it crash. But these are all things that you can talk about with your producer. And again, if you're a writer, don't write with these things in mind. Let your producer offer alternatives for you. What probably made Get Out $4.5 million is the level of talent that they brought in, as well as just having Jordan Peele. The Jordan Peele from P and Keel at that point. I could imagine that their rates were at least 5 to 6 figures plus a point or so. Also, they had union crew rates, and they might have had a longer shooting schedule, which can easily add tens, if not hundreds of thousands onto a production budget. And then post-production costs are probably astronomical at that level of filmmaking. But in all, to conclude this segment, can you make Get Out on an indie level budget for $700K or less? Absolutely, you can. And that, folks, is Get Out by Jordan Peele. First podcast. What we all think? Leave your thoughts down below. I'm very, very curious. If you liked this, you can join me next time to review number 34, Mean Girls, written by Tina Fey and directed by Mark Waters. Again, you can find the script I'll be using on Patreon, as well as the script versus screen segment for Get Out for, again, only $2. You can support me, please, if you'd like. So with that, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time, and happy reading! How are we doing? I feel like I'm having a fun time. 50 minutes already! Jesus!